you're an advocate for more advertising on top of the Parthenon with drones.
It's already there. It's already there. It is a phenomenon, just like tourists.
It's tacky.
And Santorini and Mykonos is not.
The Parthenon, man, it's different. The Parthenon. It's steeped within the identity of our people.
Why?
You can't, it just is.
What does the Parthenon have to do with Mitso and Plaka? And we wouldn't agree. I didn't get your consent for this, but I'm sure that you're used to me speaking on your behalf.
Absolutely, yep.
In terms of Adidas and how we feel about that, there's a great Greek phrase, "Σας γράφουμε στα παλιά μας τα παπούτσια."
How's your week been, Dean?
Before we even get into my week, I have an issue with the name of the show.
Why does that not surprise me?
Romaic, I don't like anymore. How about apotropaic? Apotropaic is the word that was used for the various paraphernalia from ancient times till now that Greeks used, mes enfants, to ward off evil, which is not only your land tax bill, but everything else in the world which we don't like. So apotropaic, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, in ancient times, tomati,
Yes. That was
which is a very ancient Greek thing. Yeah, that's
right.
apotropaic. And then you have your various griffins and lions and things on walls of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So we had our own Greek feng shui, mes enfants. So if you put, especially on crossroads or in corners, that wards off the evil. Griffins, lions and tigers and bears, like the Wizard of Oz, but that kind of thing, symbols to ward off evil.
Right.
And then you had your curses where you would write, may this person perish and may their genitals shrivel.
We had that too.
And then they would stick a pin or what's the word, broca. What is broca in English? I think it would be nail. Nail through a leaden tablet with this curse inscribed, and then they'd hide it in places. And they're finding them all over the place now.
Really?
And so this kind of thing. Apotropaic, because we're a family show, mes enfants. We don't want evil. We're on the side of good, like Trump. So and Putin,
all right.
and Putin. And next, so
Way to politicise
bit,
it.
Yes, the Romaic bit I've got a problem with.
Okay.
But my friend Angelo Bartzis, who has had the intense misfortune of watching a couple of episodes,
Right.
and is one of His Majesty's council and learned in the law, has taken issue with the word ruminations. And instead of ruminations, he posits that we use the word, what did he say? Reflux, because that is the experience that he had while watching us, especially when the camera was turned to me, mes enfants, and I apologise for that. There is antacid. There are a number of things you can do. Just ask your local chemist. We're not authorised to give advice. So apotropaic reflux, that thing where it keeps on coming back,
AP.
but not in a good way.
Yeah, but it's not
Maybe you can do something with the graphics of the show to encompass these very important loaded
it's
terms.
not an alliteration. It has to be an alliteration.
I
Otherwise,
can't even spell alliteration. Apotropaic alliterations? I don't know. How about this? How about the 3 viewers who are out there write in and tell us what they would like the show to be called? We will ignore them. We will scoff at them. You'll never know this. It's just between us. But possibly we might use it and take the credit for it.
if they come up with something good.
Good God. Perish the thought. So, yeah,
One
today
lives in
we're
hope.
talking about apotropaic reflux. So have your antacid ready. Have your Eno ready. Let's go.
Okay.
What are we talking about?
Well, let's go through a couple of things. I've got a couple of topics that I want to discuss today. One is very topical, something that's actually happened
I see what
quite
you did there.
recently.
That's quite clever. That's called lack of vocabulary, Pete.
Yeah, thanks.
There is a thesaurus on the shelf just over there. No one uses them anymore.
No
Thesauruses.
one ever does. We're not with AI now doing everything for us.
Thesaurus is a sick joke because thesaurus comes from the Greek word thesauros, which means treasure, and yet it's a bloody book with just different fancy ways of saying things in the same way.
A treasure trove of words.
It's garbage, is what it is.
Well, not everyone has an encyclopedic knowledge of words like some people.
No,
Dean.
some people need to go and find a thesaurus. But anyway, people don't use them anymore. You just go online. Chat GPT, give me another word for inane repartee. Answer Romaic Ruminations. You anticipate me strangely, my friend. I love it.
Today, we've got some pretty disturbing news from Egypt. And apparently they've actually taken over one of the oldest monasteries, the Orthodox monasteries.
Okay, it's very distressing news. Mes enfants, if you don't know about the monastery of St. Catherine's, let me say a few things. Founded in 560 AD or thereabouts, so around about the time of the Emperor Justinian. in Mount Sinai in Egypt. This is supposed to be the spot where Moses had the great revelation of the Ten Commandments.
Right.
We call it the Theovadiston Oros, the God-trodden mountain. It sounds a lot better in Greek than it does in English, because if you remember from your Bible, Moses wanted to see God, and God said, no one can look me in the face and live, which is kind of what Albo says after his election as Australia's Prime Minister. He says, but I will go past and you will see my back. Yeah. And a lot of scholars argue over what that actually means, but the whole idea is that God, whether it was in the form of Jesus or we don't know how that worked, or we do, but that's a long story. He walked upon that mountain and he saw Moses, and Moses had contact with the divinity, and he came down with the Ten Commandments, which is the foundation of the Jewish faith, foundation of our faith, and these kind of things. So it's a very important place.
Right.
That monastery has been in operation continuously since the 560s. We know that 80, 90 years later, Islam and the newly Islamized tribes emerging out of Arabia take over Egypt. And even then, the monastery is protected.
Right.
Why? Because the monks, very clever, very wily, send a letter to Muhammad and say, hey, guy, how you doing? We're the monks from Mount Sinai, and by the way, we think you're good, you're great. Can you just leave us alone, because tolerance, freedom, wokeness, all of that.
Right.
Well, they may have not used the word woke.
Perhaps not.
Maybe they did. We don't know. And Muhammad, according to history and legend, sent back a firman, a order saying this monastery is to be protected.
Right.
Could have been him. Could have been one of the later caliphs. We don't know. And by way of thank you, by way of gratitude, the monks built a mosque inside the grounds of Mount Sinai Monastery. So within the grounds of the monastery, it's not used, but there is a mosque.
Right.
And it's an amazing place, Pete. Massive walls.
You've been?
I've been. Massive walls. Doors which date from the time of Justinian. And it's an immense, we was using the word thesaurus, an immense treasure trove of icons, ecclesiastical artworks dating back a very, very long time. So some of the earliest icons we have are housed at Mount Sinai, including this amazing icon of Jesus. And you would have seen it where the artist is trying to portray the dual nature of Jesus, God and man. So you see the face, but if you look carefully, one side of the face doesn't match the other. They're different. And one is the stern, if you like, angry face of God, and the other one is the compassionate face of Jesus.
Right.
All in the one icon. And the whole idea is showing the duality, God as man, man as God, the rest of that. Amazing icons, amazing stories. I'll tell you something, Pete. I've been to Jerusalem. I've been to the Holy Land. I never in my life, ever, anywhere have felt, and I don't know if many people have experienced this, but that sense of the divine, a sense which is so omnipresent that it almost brings you to your knees, as I have on the top of Mount Sinai. It's complete silence, and you feel this brooding presence.
Really?
It's amazing. And complete silence is something we don't understand because we live in cities, and even when you're out in the countryside, you hear birds. On top of the mountain, you hear nothing. You hear not a sound. It is just you and whatever else is out there. It's an amazing place. It would have been more amazing had I not gone with a bunch of tourists who were complaining about camel sores, but that's another story, and I can't talk about that. And what is even more interesting is that in the middle of this desert, you still get afflicted by mosquitoes. And I got bitten really badly, but that's another story. But yeah, this monastery has been there for so many years, so 1,700 years or thereabouts. And there's even a tribe of Bedouins called the Jabaliya, the mountain dwellers, who, and this is interesting because you're of Pontic descent.
I am.
These are supposed to be descendants of guards brought by the Emperor Justinian from Pontus to guard the monastery.
Really?
They become Islamized, they're Muslims, but they protect the monastery. And they obtain their livelihood from the monastery. They're lovely people. I met some. I went to where they live. They hosted us. It was fantastic. And now there's been a court order stating that the St. Catherine's will be nationalised, that his assets will belong to the state, that the monks have to leave, and that all its treasures belong to, and antiquities belong to the Egyptian state. And that's caused some distress because we don't understand why after so many years we've come to this point. And the fact, obviously, that all of these treasures, antiquities, the oldest manuscript of the Bible
Was there?
was there. Parts of it, I think, still are. But there was a lovely man called Tissendorf,
Right.
who worked for the Tsar, and I think in the early 19th century, chanced to go to the monastery and rummage through the library. They got a library with amazing manuscripts in Syriac, Georgian, Latin, Greek, any other language you can imagine. Very old works, and found the oldest manuscript of the Bible. Said to the monks, I'm taking it.
Just took it.
And he was a representative of the Tsar. His argument was that the monks were using it to light fires and use it for various other bits, and that they themselves didn't recognize the importance of...
Right.
It was a kind of a Lord Elgin argument,
Yeah.
And he took part of that manuscript to Russia, and it's still there. Gave it to the Tsar, got a promotion, all of that. So there's amazing things there. Now all that belongs to the government of Egypt, apparently, and the courts say monks have got to leave. We've got an Australian-born monk there, Theophilus, as well. Lovely guy. So we've got an Australian connection to Sinai. But since that controversial court order,
Yes.
the Egyptian government has intimated that, yes, there is a court order, but they may possibly not enforce it
Right.
because of the outcry from the Greek world. Peter O'Toole said something about it as well, which is amazing.
I had no idea he was still alive.
He might not have been. But had he been alive, or if he is still alive, he would say something about it, wouldn't he?
So what is the... they've given no explanation as to how this court order came about?
Well, obviously there are pressures within the society.
To take over a monastery.
Egypt is a complex place with its
that is
own
true.
religious divisions and issues, and that probably prompted this. So what are these people doing there, and why can't we have a bit of that? So they were going to make it into a museum. But watch this space. We don't know what will happen next. But it is a very important part of Hellenism, has its own archbishop, Damaskinos. So it's an
Really?
autonomous church.
It's an autonomous church.
Yeah.
So
Like Canberra. Well, it is. It runs itself. It's not subject to any other jurisdiction.
do they actually they swear fealty to the patriarch? When we say autonomous, they're autonomous from...
Look, they're not under the Patriarchate of Constantinople.
They're not.
And it's not like the Targaryens' maison font in Game of Thrones, where you swear fealty to the first of his name. They are an autonomous, self-running church.
Wow.
The way, for example, the Albanian church is, or any of these other churches. Yeah. So there you go. There's that.
St. Catherine? Any reason why it was taken? Do we know much about why that name was
Saint
chosen?
Catherine of Alexandria, very famous saint, broken on the wheel. If you look at the icons, there's a lady wearing a crown, and then there's a wheel, which was her martyrdom. She was a very important,
Really?
according to the Martyrologion, intellectual, very learned.
Right.
They weren't too happy that she was a Christian. So she suffered greatly and was martyred in Alexandria, so the monastery was named after her. What a lovely way to begin the show.
Well, it's topical.
It is topical, yeah.
There is no actual, apart from the fact that the government said that they may...
No, it's a watch this space kind of thing. Facts are emerging. And the funny thing is the Prime Minister of Greece had a meeting recently with Sisi, the dictator of Egypt, and we were reassured that all is well. And then this happened, but the whole idea is now they're trying to patch it up and backtrack and show themselves to be kind and loving and not interested in nationalising stuff.
Yeah, I just would have thought with Egypt's good relationship with Greece, they would have thought twice about,
I can't possibly comment on Egypt's good relationship with Greece. I remember that here in Australia there are a large number of members of an expatriate Greek-Egyptian community that are here because of Egypt's supposed historic good relations with Greece.
Yes.
And you will recall that the 50s with NASA
Yeah.
nationalising all their stuff and basically telling them that they might be a good idea if they moved on.
Moved on, yeah.
Yeah.
Gee, it just seems like there's a lot of history with a lot of bad blood.
Oh, we are the experts in bad blood, Pete. Bad blood is what we do best.
Just infuriates me that we seem to be discussing a lot about how we've been victims of the region of that part of the world and how we're just being pushed out more and more and more. It just seems like everything after 1453 has been absolutely very negative for us.
We don't talk about that on our show. 1452, yes. But that other one that you mentioned, no, that never happened. We don't want to know about it.
You don't know about
it's like Alesia and the Gauls. You know, you don't mention the Battle of Alesia to the Gauls because that was when they lost to the Romans and the Romans took over Gallia, or the land of the Gauls. We don't mention it. Okay?
Apart from one small village.
What happened in 1453 didn't happen. Apart from one small village, which still holds out. Yeah?
That's right.
And that's the village of, I don't know.
I forget the name of the village. I do know the two characters that helped defend it, though.
Yanin, I think it was, wasn't it? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm sorry, Dan. We are going to talk about 1453 because we've just
what about
commemorated
1453?
Well, we just commemorated the date, right?
We got to stop talking about 1453. 1453 is the date, 29th of May.
Right.
So that was for us, I mean, and also give an idea when we're recording this, that was yesterday for us, was the day that the city of Constantinople fell.
Right.
So ever since that date, darkness, doom and gloom, the Ottomans took over. The peoples that belonged to the Byzantine Empire were subject to the Ottomans. And then there was that long process where all these people had to find some meaning, develop an ethnic consciousness, and that culminated in nationalism and the renaissance of the Greek state and all these other states in the Balkans, and then the Balkan Wars and a hell of a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
So all of that happened, and we as Greeks tend to blame everything that is wrong with modern Greece on 1453.
Really?
Yeah. So, oh no, you know, we were a great and ancient and wise and sagacious people, if that's even the word. But yet, then we were subjected to the Ottomans. So the fact that there's corruption in Greece, or the fact that there is a phenomenon called Sakis Rouvas, we're going to blame the Ottomans for that. You know, had the Ottomans not come, that wouldn't have taken place. As wouldn't Greek rap. Have you ever heard Greek rap?
I've heard
Which I like to call Greek crap.
Oh,
How excremental is Greek rap?
Gee, it's horrible.
So Greek rap exists as a horrid consequence of 1453, because had the Byzantine Empire not fallen, there would have been no need for such crap. Don't you agree? So we've got to look at things in perspective and say, well, no, that's actually not true. Because what we know is that by 1453, the Byzantine Empire, which lasted 1,000 years, was just a shadow of itself.
It was.
It was Constantinople and a little bit outside Constantinople.
Yeah.
And the rest of the Byzantine world was under the Ottomans, or it was under the Venetians. There was a little bit of a survival in Pontus. They hung on for a little bit of a while, and a little bit around Mistral, which was still part of Byzantium, but everything else had fallen. It was Venetian, it was Turkish, it was gone. For me, the real fall of Constantinople is in 1204.
1204.
Which is when the Crusaders, they're going off down to Jerusalem, and then
Supposedly.
they can't pay their way, and then the Doge of Venice, whose grave we spit on every time we go to Hagia Sophia, because it's buried there, said, you know what, why don't you go to Constantinople and take that and we'll divide it. And that was when the big looting and pillaging took place. That's when all the gold reserves were gone, artworks were lost, the empire was carved up into basically Crusader states. So you could say that at that point Greece was colonized.
Right.
And we talk a lot about colonization these days, you know, Britain being a colonial empire and the legacy of that here as it relates to Aborigines and other races. Greece was colonized by these people, and it had been colonized earlier by the Roman times. In the Roman times, we'll get to that. But so you have that. You have this colonization of Greece. An anachronistic term, I'm referring to it geographically, yeah? And the splitting up of the empire, you had the Empire of Nicaea in Asia Minor, which hung on for about 60 to 80 years, and then they went and took over Constantinople again. You had the Despotate of Epirus,
Yes.
and you had the Empire of Trapezunda. And they're all vying to be the official successors to the Byzantine Empire and take it all back. You have the Serbs up in the north, and Tsar Stefan Dusan saying, no, I am the emperor of the Serbs and the Romans.
And the Romans.
Yeah, so you have all of this in the mix.
Right.
But by that stage, what was Byzantium, in terms of political power, gone. In terms of intellectual, cultural power, no, that lasted. And there was a bit of a renaissance during the Paleologian period.
Right.
And that lasted for a while, where you have beautiful artwork, amazing amazing literature and so on and so forth. But by 1453, it's all gone. Constantinople is a tributary state to the Sultan.
Yeah.
The Sultan calls the shots. So there was not this massive collapse. The collapse had already happened over the past 200 years. And that's something that we got to remember. And the other thing we got to remember is, yes, there was a collapse. Yes, there was 400 or in some cases 500 years of Ottoman domination. But that was a long time ago. And to what extent do we blame all of the ills of modern Greece on these events? I mean, it's very easy to do so because it's almost like a scapegoat. It's the whole idea, well, you know what, that's not fixable because it's a legacy of that and we're stuffed. There's nothing we can do about it. Greece will never recover. Yeah. And we've seen how corrosive and how terrible that kind of mentality is, especially in relation to the Megalithian, 1922. We're going to get back everything that belongs to us.
Yeah.
Great idea if you lived in a vacuum and there weren't other people living there who were stronger than you. Yeah, I mean, we've abandoned that idea now. But I think we've still got a cultural cringe. And it makes sense because you know that up until possibly the early 20th century, there were more Greeks living in Constantinople than there were in Athens. Up until the early 20th century, the cultural capital of Hellenism was still Constantinople.
Really?
The books that were being published, the literature, that was the place to be. And we still haven't let go of that, even though that has ceased to be the case.
Yeah.
Especially in the aftermath of 1922. And then you have the 1955 Istanbul riots, the pogrom, where hundreds of thousands of Greeks have to leave. And now we'd be lucky if there's 2,000 left.
Yeah.
And there's the patriarchate, which limps on, hated. You know, the Patriotic Party of Turkey has recently taken the patriarch to court over his use of the title ecumenical.
You serious?
Yeah. Because the Turkish state does not recognize the patriarch as ecumenical. That title doesn't exist for them. I would have thought that that's a private matter for each organization. So that if we want to call ourselves the international ecumenical Romaic Ruminations, that's no one's business. But in Turkey, it is their business. So they recognize the patriarch as the head bishop of the Greeks who live there, the Rum, but nothing else.
Nothing else.
And there's a Turkish patriarch. Did you know that there is a Turkish Orthodox patriarch maison forme in Turkey?
No.
Yes.
How does that work?
I'll tell you how it works. So, you know where Cappadocia is,
Yes.
which is in the center of Turkey, central Turkey, south central.
We'll throw a map on.
Will we?
Yeah.
Okay.
A nice little graphic to show you exactly where it is.
I don't like graphics. I don't believe in graphics. But let me paint you a word picture, maison forme. I won't. Trust me. A lot of the villages in Caesarea in Cappadocia were Turkish-speaking. So this priest called Pavlos Karahisariadis gets the order that they all have to leave because the whole idea of the population exchange after the Asia Minor catastrophe was not if you're Greek or if you feel Greek, you have to leave. But if you are Orthodox, you're Greek and you have to leave. If you are Muslim, it doesn't matter what language you speak. In Greece, you have to leave. So the criteria was religion and not identity or language.
Right.
So they're Turkish-speaking people. There were Greek villagers as well. They spoke their own dialect, akin to Pondian, but with differences. Pavlos Karahisariadis says, okay, I don't want to leave. What can I do? He says, well, you know what? I'm not Greek. I'm Turkish. I'm Turkish Orthodox. He becomes a ardent supporter of Kemal Atatürk's Nationalist Party. Kemal said if we had three people like him, things would have been a lot different. And he recognizes him as patriarch of the Turkish Orthodox. And with Kemal's support, he goes to Constantinople and he takes over some churches, which belong to the ecumenical patriarchate. And his family is still occupying those churches today. Now, no, he doesn't really have a massive following. His flock gets deported. He doesn't manage to save them. He manages to save himself. Pavlos Karahisariadis renames himself Patriarch Papa Eftim I. And then with the Turkish laws about having a surname, they Turkify their name and they have the surname Erenerol. And he passes on his patriarchate to his son. And I think we're up to Papa Eftim III, I'm not sure. But he still exists. And these people belong to the Grey Wolves in Turkey, which is a very virulent nationalistic, possibly over-the-top nationalistic group that makes all sorts of outrageous claims like they invented the question mark and that they want to do all sorts of things to
They invented the question mark?
Possibly. So, question mark over that. And he's there. And they've recently been involved in some court cases where they may or may not have been involved with the Parakratos, the deep state in Turkey, and they're very much linked into what's going on there. They are, to all intents and purposes, Turks, but they hold on to their position as patriarchs of this illusory Turkish Orthodox Church.
Gee.
Yeah, they exist. And then the whole idea was, well, you know what, we've got them, why do we need the patriarchate? But because of world opinion, the ecumenical patriarch stayed. So, yeah, we actually have two patriarchs in Turkey, a real one and Papa Eftim.
A real one that they're taking to court.
Yeah, so they're taking him to court because it's not ecumenical. Yeah. How about this? What if he changed it? Because the patriarchal kitchen, mes enfants, if you ever visit the patriarchate in Fanari, is superb.
Yeah?
And I had the best ekmek gadaifi there.
Don't
So
say.
instead of ecumenical, ekmekumenical, he can open up a bakery and say, look, or maybe we can give that role to Papa Eftim because he wants to be ecumenical. He can be ekmekumenical. What do you reckon? Something. I love ekmek. It's fantastic.
I love ekmek too, Dean. I've never thought about
Ecumenical.
marrying that with the name
Ecumenical.
ecumenical.
I think it'd be great.
Oh, gee.
So yeah, 1453, ekmek. You've heard it here first, mes enfants.
Mate.
As a consequence of, if there was no fall, we wouldn't have had ekmek, because that was a legacy from our Ottoman brothers and sisters too, unless it existed in Byzantium. And they
Isn't that what we
appropriated it.
usually say, though? All this stuff did exist in Byzantium.
Well, I'll tell you what, Pasturma was Byzantine.
Yeah, we took care of that last session.
Dolmades, we reckon, were Byzantine, but they're not. You find them in the Assyrian ancient tablets. They've uncovered ancient tablets in Mesopotamia, and they have things like
Right.
baklava, they have things like, or similar, dolmades, but they're different. They're actually trying to roll their own and smoke them rather than eat them. It required years of civilization and Byzantine finesse to actually teach these Middle Eastern people how to eat these things. Yeah.
Gee. I had no idea that this would go down
I'm hungry now. We didn't get to eat breakfast.
a sacrilegious path.
Sacrilegious. How is that sacrilegious? No sacks were harmed in the filming of this segment. Either with a CK or a C, mes enfants. Please know this. Yeah.
Having said that, and having thought about something sacrilegious, there was something that actually happened in Athens, was it last month? Didn't they actually do some sort of light show or drone show of a Baputia over the...
So, Pete, I have a problem with Greeks who get offended about everything.
Right.
You just got to calm down, guys. You know, everyone's got this bee in their bonnet, a chip on their shoulder, a bulge in their pants. No, that's the wrong analogy. And they get offended about everything. And you have this Parthenon sitting on the sacred rock. And I don't understand what's sacred about it. Because I love the Parthenon. I admire its proportions, the artistry involved. But everyone in Athens seems not to. When I go to Athens and I say, you ever been to the Parthenon? Most people go, nah. It's just there.
That's because they don't find it sacred. Doesn't mean it's not sacred.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, sacred is in the eye of the beholder. You know what I mean?
That is true.
So recently, George Lanthimos, who apparently is a filmmaker. I didn't know this, but apparently he makes what purport to be films.
Right.
And he wanted to make a film called Bargonia. Something to do about aliens taking over the world. I thought that already happened, and then the Illuminati and there's Trump and all that. But apparently not. This is the realms of fiction. And he applied to film some parts in the Parthenon. They said, no, you can't. It's a sacred rock. And Ministry of whatever it is, culture, I think, inverted commas, said, no, we won't give you a thing. And then all of a sudden, this heavenly shoe, appears above the Parthenon. It's a sign, mes enfants, you know. And what it is that Adidas, which is a company that apparently makes shoes and tracksuits and all sorts of athletic equipment, which in itself is an abomination because the ancient Greeks wore nothing, you know, which...
Especially during sport.
During sport, which signifies a lack of ambition and the fact that they had no commercial sense, because what about sponsorship rights? What about logos? Idiots. Anyway, I won't go that far.
I wonder if it fell.
Adidas got these drones
Yeah.
to fly over the Parthenon in the shape of a shoe.
Yes.
And they filmed this. And apparently they did this without permission because you need permission to do anything that has to do with the Parthenon except maybe concrete over it. Because you remember a few years ago they went concreted over the Parthenon.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And then they built that building in front of the Parthenon, and it blocked the view of the Parthenon. It's in Blaka. That's okay, but the drone isn't. And I'm saying, guys, calm down. Παπούτσι είναι ρε. So what? Θα σου δώσω με τα παπούτσια στο χέρι.
But come on,
Θα σου βάλω με τα δυο πόδια στο ένα παπούτσι. You know what it is?
What is it?
The outrage comes from that Greek saying, παπούτσι από τον τόπο σου και, that's right, ας είναι μπαλωμένο. No, we only like our own shoes. We don't want their shoes. Adidas. Do you remember when we were kids? I don't know if you did this because you're, a couple of months younger than me. So I'm a lot older.
Much younger.
But we would sit there and we'd try and figure out what acronyms were. Like you had the famous one, Οργανισμός Εκδόσεων Διδακτικών Βιβλίων at Greek school.
Oh, yes.
And we'd say, διάβασε, βαριέμαι, ο δάσκαλος είναι βλάκας. And we would laugh. That was funny before internet. So Adidas. I remember I was at a Greek γιορτή and one of the older kids comes up and goes, hey, you talking to me? Hey, you. Okay. You know what Adidas means? I said, what's Adidas? I didn't know. I had no understanding of sport until I turned 23. And he said, all day I dream about sex. I didn't know what sex was either. And then out of nowhere, this thing, I think it might have been a papuccio pandofla, goes flying, hits him in the head. And there's an old uncle there sitting there with a VB long neck. That's beer for you people watching at home. Saying, oh, here, it's all day I dream of Soviet Union. Because, yeah, we had that in our family. It isn't. Adidas has to do with the name of the founder of the company, whose first name is Adolf.
Yeah.
And whose surname I can't remember. But that's what it is. And so it's Adolf stamping his boot on the Acropolis.
Yeah,
and we've been there, haven't we, before?
Well,
we've been there before, Pete.
You've given it a German context.
In the 1940s, there was another Adolf who tried to do the same thing, and we didn't appreciate it very much, did we?
No, we didn't.
No. So I think that sparked a nerve with the Greeks. You know, who's this Adolf? And what the hell is he doing? Adolf Dassler, that's his name. It has come to me. Adolf Dassler. You know, all you do is you take off the das and you replace it with a hit, and suddenly that name starts sounding familiar. I
think that's what the issue was, though, right? If it wasn't a shoe or something else, I don't think that the Greeks would have been as upset. But the shoe...
What? I don't know. What if it was a swastika? What's the difference between a Nazi jackboot and a swastika?
Would have been less offensive.
Anyway, but I've got... There's also another thing that they don't talk about, okay? The Greek government didn't know. The Greek government didn't give the permit.
Yeah.
What's on top of the Parthenon as you go into the Propilia? You know, Propilia, when you first walk in the ornamental gate, which is all but destroyed, what's next to it on the right as you're going up? The Temple of Athens. Nike.
Yeah.
So we've already given naming rights to one athletic company, so Nike, just do it. Adidas, anything is possible. They've got a few other slogans.
That's not the Nike that...
So is it...
not the same Nike.
Grazie. How do you know? Are you the Ministry of Culture?
Don't confuse our audience members.
Grazie. So we've already given naming rights to Nike.
Oh.
And is it no wonder that Adidas is... What's happening, Pete, is like Greece is a colonized country. We have two imperialist, colonialist, capitalist powers having a turf war over our sacred rock. One's already there, and the other one's trying to entrench itself. So instead of getting angry, what the Greek government should do, enterprising Greek government, say, how can we capitalize from this? How can we make money from this? But they don't. They're silly. They talk about our sacred rock and our this and that. Άντε. Και τι έγινε δηλαδή?
Such the capitalist.
It is. But it is capitalist. These are companies who are engaged in exploiting the labor of minions in third world countries, their word, not mine, in order to sell these shoes, which are ridiculously expensive, to people who join the gym and then don't turn up. Έτσι δεν είναι? So, εντάξει.
So, what would you say? Just
a huge...
So I would be putting a Trump-like tariff on the sale of Adidas athletic wear within Greece. That's what I'd be doing. And reaping the benefits of that, you see.
While Greeks pay more for shoes than the counterparts in the rest of Europe.
Who needs shoes anyway?
In Greece?
Paputsια από τον τόπο σου, you boost the local shoemaking industry.
Yeah, which is just not thriving at the moment, right?
Oh no, if you go to the islands, there are those supposedly homemade sandals that are made in Taiwan and the rest of that. So you could do that. I remember in the 80s, everyone would come back, αυτά είναι ελληνικά παπούτσια, είναι δερμάτινα, είναι τα καλύτερα, and all made in Italy or somewhere else. But it doesn't matter, or in Turkey increasingly. Not that there were shoes, they're fantastic shoes. But yeah, Adidas, Nike. Next thing you know, there'll be this big puma jumping over the rock. Yeah.
So you're an advocate for more advertising on top of the Parthenon with drones.
It's already there. It's already there. It is a phenomenon, just like tourists.
It's tacky.
And Santorini and Mykonos is not.
It's the Parthenon. It's different. The Parthenon. It's deep within the identity of our people.
Why?
You can't, it just is.
What does the Parthenon have to do with Mitso in Plaka? Apart from the fact that on the way to the Parthenon, I'll stop by his shop and buy some souvenirs.
That's the idea of it.
I need to tell you something. The goddess Athena is probably dead. Sorry that I mentioned this. Although you could take the ultra-Orthodox view and say, well, look, for the vast majority of the period that it was actually used as a religious building, it was used as an Orthodox church.
It was, yeah.
It was the third most important Orthodox church in the whole of Byzantium, going back to 1453. Basil, the Bulgar slayer, because that's, a very racially neutral term, actually visited that place to celebrate his victories. And right up until, I think, the 1920s, you could see icons painted on bits and pieces of the marble.
Really?
Which were left over from that period. So maybe it is an affront to fly drones over a holy site after all. I don't know. But my point is Nike still is there already. Why can't Adidas have a crack? See, that goes towards...
something should be held sacred.
Put it this way, if there was an ACCC, the Australian Consumer people, Competition Commission,
Right.
they would look at that and say, well, you know what, that's a monopoly. In America, they'd call that antitrust. And they need to break that up. They need to sell the constituent. So maybe the Erechthion... the Erechthians, that palace that with the Caryatids, and no one is quite sure what purpose that function that building served. The Erechthion could be licensed to Viagra for advertisement. Erechthion, and they could fly. I don't know what kind of drone and in what shape would you fly over the Erechthion to advertise Viagra? I don't know. I lack imagination. It's my superpower. I have two superpowers, mes enfants. One is that I never think things through. Number two is that I have absolutely no imagination. So I don't know. But yeah, you could possibly do that. You could make a large amount of money, which could be used for really important projects like subsidizing the trips of Greek members of parliament to the diaspora, where they come here, wave at a parade, get taken to Oakley or any other Greek centre around town for souvlaki, and then ceremoniously get flown home.
I know that we have a tendency to be somewhat frivolous with regards to our culture in many ways.
I take my culture very seriously.
But I think that our people should hold certain icons, even buildings, even if the population doesn't do so as much within the city that they live in, to high esteem. I think the idea of it needs to be maintained by our people.
And I should mention, for the purposes of full disclosure, that this segment has been brought to you by Parthenon Travel. Parthenon Marble.
Okay. All right. All right.
Parthenon Architects.
Point made. There's an article that you wrote very recently.
I deny this vehemently.
Oh, yeah, well, you deny your name's on it, though, so unless you've got a ghostwriter that's actually writing it, well, what would a ghostwriter be? Ghostwriter, yeah. In other words, yeah, you've got a ghostwriter. If someone actually writes it on your behalf...
Hang on, do I have a ghostwriter?
Well, if someone's written an article and it's got your name under it, so... If you didn't write
Why the hell would they do that? Why would anyone put their name to something that I purportedly written?
Anyway.
I want to know who this person is. Produce. the said person.
Okay, the article is named Ego Favorinus.
Ego Favorinus.
Like I say,
Favorinus.
What is Ego Favorinus? What's the name?
Favorinus.
Was that actually
Okay.
somebody's name?
Favorinus is a really interesting guy. He was a skeptic philosopher.
So he was a philosopher.
Yeah, and he was not Greek.
What era?
This was the Roman era.
Roman
so he was
era.
born around about, I think, 60 AD.
Right, okay then.
Lived for a decent amount of time, died after that. And he was from Arletum, which is in Gaul, which is in modern-day France, the city of Arles, where Vincent van Gogh famously spent a lot of time and
Oh, right.
produced some amazing paintings. It's in the sunny south of France, not the gloomy south of Greece, which is called Crete and Ravdos. These unspeakably,
Just alienate some people from Greece now.
unspeakably brilliant places. I love Crete. So Favorinus ends up in, he's a Roman citizen. By that stage, Greece is basking under Roman protection. It sucked. Colonized by Rome. And he ends up in Corinth. And he's a teacher, he's a philosopher. He takes part in the public discourse in the town. He's one of them. And then things get really ugly because at some stage there's a move to put up a statue of him. And the reason why is because he had it good in with the emperor.
Right.
I think it was Hadrian at the time, could be wrong. Fact checkers out there. I think it's Hadrian. Could have been Adrian. You know that. Adrian! I've been dying to do that. It's so small. And he managed to get some privileges for Corinth. But that raises the ire of some of these Corinthians who say, why the hell are we raising a statue of him? He's not even Greek, re. Doxeno. Because we're really, really hospitable people. You know, the word philoxenia, like the word philotimo, was invented to compel Greeks to be nice to strangers. Yeah,
Yes.
because it doesn't come naturally to them.
Is that what you believe the essence of the word is? That it's not because it's inherent with us and we had to give it a word, but
It was a
something had to be
religious. It
enforced
was a
on us.
religious duty. So you had Zeus Xenios, the Zeus of strangers.
Right, yes.
So your religion, the ancient Greek religion, which is a massive other topic that we cannot discuss without the assistance of the great Savas Grigoropoulos, the arch-pagan of the Greek community. We'll do that. He's in Greece at the moment. But they were compelled to be nice to strangers because Zeus commanded that.
Right.
Okay, so philoxenia, you know, the love of strangers, looking after them, because it's a religious requirement. Doesn't come naturally. Nothing that pertains to niceness and mankind comes naturally. It has to be enforced. That's why religion is important. Marx said this. Don't quote me. Maybe he didn't. But actually, Marx is interesting because Marx used to copy the Bible. So there's a...
Don't say
was it
that.
Marx or Lenin? No, Lenin.
Lenin. Okay.
Lenin did this. He'd say things like, he who does not work does not eat, you know, referring to the landed aristocratic classes. But that's from St. Paul. You know, copycat. We were talking about Crete before.
Yeah.
There's the Epimenides paradox, which is also quoted by St. Paul, and I think it's one of the few, or possibly the only instance in the New Testament which provides a direct quote from ancient Greek philosophers. So Epimenides said, all Cretans are liars. So if a Cretan says, I am a liar, if he says, I'm not a liar, it's a lie, so it's a paradox. St. Paul quotes this in one of his epistles.
Really?
Yeah, the Cretans get a really bad rap. I don't know why St. Paul was compelled to do this, but I like the fact that St. Paul, you know, the man who did more than anyone to form Christian doctrine, was secretly reading Epimenides in the background, you know, and felt moved enough to put that in there. What was I talking about?
Favorinus.
Favorinus. Flavouriness. I think that's great, yeah. You know, you can have the isopoles, you can have the chicken stock. But, yeah, they're upset. They're saying he's a foreigner. Why would we honour him? We don't honour him. And he writes a series of discourses, this Favorinus guy, where he talks about identity.
Right.
And he says, yeah, it's true. I'm not from here. I'm from Arles. But number one, I'm a Roman, you guys are Romans, because guess who our boss is?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're no longer independent. Two, in what way are you Greek? Corinth is a Roman colony, and you're descendants of the people that Rome has settled here, because we know that before 100 or so, 150, I can't remember the exact date, before the birth of Christ, the Romans sacked and razed Corinth.
Right.
They did this because they are Romans, and that's what Romans do. Romaic. That's the Romaic part of Romaic Ruminations. That's why our friend Angelo took exception to the word Romaic. And apotropaic, had they had enough apotropaic objects all around Corinth, the Romans would have been repelled.
Clearly.
Like those natural mosquito repellents that don't work. Something like that, mes enfants. Or more eyes. See, that's the point. You go to the various Greek festivals in Melbourne, and I'm sure that's the case in other parts of the world, but I'm not sure. And there are more apotropaic eyes being sold than anything. Why? Because we want to keep the Romans at bay. And it works. Have you seen any Romans invade any of our festivals lately?
Not lately, no, except for one in Moonee Ponds.
I didn't see any Romans there, but we didn't have eyes because it was a religious festival, and we don't do in our religious aspects. We don't really emphasize the eye too much. No good. But when it's a secular festival, there are no Roman invasions because everyone is selling these matja. Yeah. So Favorinus says, okay, A, we're all Romans. B, I speak Greek. I engage in Greek philosophy and discourse.
Yeah.
How am I less Greek than you are? How are you more Greek than I? Are we not the same? Is it birth that gives you the right to be Greek, or is it involvement in Greek things?
Interesting discussion.
It really hurt him.
Yeah.
He said, I am Greek. And this is in Roman times. And I mean, this goes back to discussions that diasporan communities have today, and also
absolutely.
communities within Greece. And I know I've been to Greece where, in my younger days, mes enfants, I did a very stupid thing. I asserted opinions about what was going on in Greece at the time to relatives and friends.
Right.
And they said to me, how dare you?
Yeah, of course. How
You
dare
don't have the right to do
No, of
that.
course
You
not.
are not from here.
Correct.
You're technically not Greek.
Mm.
There's another interesting thing that I get is when you go there and you speak Greek, they go, why are you speaking Greek for? So what do you mean? I'm Greek. No, you're not. You left. You should be speaking the language there.
You
The
got
whole
that, did
idea
you?
is, and I mean, that is in complete contrast to what we're taught here, which is that there's Greece, the mainland, and the mother country, and then there's the diaspora. And that is an integral part of Hellenism. That's government policy. It's even in the constitution. A lot of people in Greece, not all, don't understand this.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why you leave your country, you're cut off from it, you don't have the day-to-day experience of living there, and then you purport to be part of the whole. They don't understand that there are different forms of Hellenism. Maybe there are not. Maybe they're right. But Favorinus, in my view, belongs to that place because he says, look, I'm here. I'm on the ground. I'm with you guys. I take part in your everyday reality.
Yeah.
How am I less Greek than you? And that's a discussion I have with friends who will go to Greece and say, oh, there's bloody Filipinos and there's bloody Albanians and whatever. And they all speak better Greek than us. And they're there and they take part in the everyday life of Greece. And when we go there, our identity is threatened because for some of us, they are taking the place that we feel rightfully belongs to us.
But how do these people identify themselves in Greece?
Well, it's a complex question. If you're Eleni Fouriera, depending on what day of the week it is, you're either Albanian or Greek. So Sunday she feels Greek, Monday she feels Albanian.
I don't know who that is.
She represented Greece in Eurovision
Oh, right.
a couple of
Okay.
years ago with
Yes,
some song
yeah.
about fire.
Oh,
And she's got a Mexican type of surname, but she's from Albania.
okay.
And sometimes she feels Albanian, sometimes she feels Greek. I get that. I've got friends whose kids, Albanians who have migrated to Greece, and their kids don't want to have a bar of Albania.
Right.
And they feel ashamed about their Albanian origins, which
Right.
for me is quite sad. You should be proud of your origins, whatever they are. There are others who feel alienated by Greece. There are others who didn't like Greece and left.
There's a whole
It's controversy.
complex.
Do you remember that whole controversy years ago now about the
Odysseus, Odysseus Chennai he came top of his class. And
Yes.
The tradition is you get to hold
Yeah.
the flag in the march. We should do this. From now on, anyone who purports to march in the Greek march in honor of independence in Melbourne has to come top of their class.
top of their class. So we propose this to Sophia, get her to
We can
actually
do whatever we want, but and has to march over the Parthenon with drones. But yeah, and there was a big controversy because they said he's not Greek, he shouldn't be entitled to do it. And the boy did it, and he copped a lot of abuse. He left Greece. I think he went to
he
America.
did?
Yeah, he went to America.
Ah.
Yeah, and the same thing about that famous athlete Giannis from Nigeria, isn't it? Adetokunbo. I can't pronounce his name.
Kumu, yeah.
Yeah. In what way? I mean, Trump made fun of his Hellenism. He said, in what way is this guy Greek?
Mm.
But he's good at sport, so we include him.
But he's so Greek. Like, have you seen him give interviews?
Yeah,
Like-
but I'm not disputing his
no, but-
Hellenism.
Yeah, but
If he says he's Greek, and if he feels Greek, like Favorinus, and if he's involved in Greece and it's within him,
yeah, absolutely.
he's Greek.
I
and then the
agree.
question is this: why do you have to choose sides? Why can't you be Greek and something else?
But he's so Greek.
I don't argue about his Greekness.
Greek.
Yeah.
You've got to see some of the interviews he's given. Like when he gives
A journalist.
And do you have
piece
to
of
be,
his
do you have
mind,
to
he's
act
very Greek.
Do you have to act Greek to be Greek?
well, I think it
Favorinus
helps.
thought so.
Yeah.
He said, I'm acting like a Greek. I'm disputing. I'm taking part. I'm doing this. They weren't happy with him because he was a foreigner. Despite all of this contribution,
Yeah.
despite the engagement, despite his love of Greece, doesn't stop the people who abrogate to themselves the rights, the Greek police, the pure Greek police, to say, well, you know what? You may think you're Greek, but we say you're not.
Yeah.
And there are people out there who'll say that Yanni is not Greek.
So you never got his statue?
Oh, you know what? Statues. So here in Melbourne, we love statues almost as much as we love monuments.
We do.
Where we can lay wreaths. That's a big thing. We've spoken about it in
the
other
wreaths,
episodes.
man.
But we don't have that many statues. There's a statue of Father Nikos Moudafis in Oakley,
Okay.
and that's because he was one of the most important Greeks in Oakley, founded the Greek community there, very vibrant, contributes greatly to the life. And Oakley is the heart these days of Hellenism in
It is,
Melbourne.
yes.
That and East Doncaster. But so there's a statue of him, but that just lies forgotten in a part of Warrawee Park, and everyone forgets about it. But it's there. It's part of the public domain. There's a statue in Ballarat of George Divine Trelaw,
True.
who was the Australian soldier who helped Pondian refugees and Thracian refugees settle in Thrace after the aftermath of the First World War. So by a subscription of the Pondian and the broader Greek community, that statue exists. So we've got that. There used to be a statue of Eleftherios Venizelos at the Cretan Brotherhood in Brunswick. And you could see it from the road. Beautiful statue, which was brought here from Crete.
Right.
But that's mysteriously vanished. It has mise en fond. It's a mystery. Anyone who can give us the whereabouts of the statue will get a reward. This is a public service announcement. Please.
They haven't
community
just
service
taken it down
announcement.
because of the renovation.
No. It's vanished.
What do you mean?
No one
vanished?
knows where it is.
What? Someone just took it and just took
Yeah.
it with
No one knows what's happened to it. So please, if you have a statue of Venizelos in your backyard, which there may be an innocent explanation. You might have thought, that'd be great to have in front of my domatiès to scare away the birds. I don't know. You had a collapsing veranda and you thought that it's just the right height.
Gee.
And here is Venizelos holding up your crumbling edifice, which is a great metaphor for the Greek community. I don't know. Can you please give it back? Or at least let us know where it is so we can have some fun with it. In the nicest possible way. I love Venizelos, massive fan. So we have that. Okay. Why can't we have a statue of Yanni?
Yanni who? The composer?
No, Ademukumbo. See, you haven't forgotten who Yanni is. No, it makes sense because Australians love sport and Greeks love sport
Yeah.
because
He's more of an American athlete than an Australian.
I thought he was Greek. You just said he was Greek. Make up your mind.
Well,
You said he was so
he's
Greek.
in the NBA.
So what are you saying is that if Favorinus had left Corinth and travelled to America and joined, I don't know, the National League of Philosophers, are you
Yes.
saying he would cease to be Greek?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I'm just saying that why would we in Australia erect a statue to Favorinus?
Because he's Greek. No, not Favorinus. Yanni.
Yanni too.
Well, why did we erect a statue of Venizelos?
Well, there's no point in doing that. But the fact of the matter is,
Oh, you're saying so that Venizelos
if
is not important enough?
Atenukumbo came here and played in our NBL, then
Oh, we
would
couldn't afford him, could we?
No, we could not.
Absolutely.
No way.
Chicken feed.
We could not afford him.
Like 10 teams will have to go.
It is
"Bro, to afford
easier,
half of
mise
his
en
salary."
fond, for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle or for drones in the shape of Yanni to fly over the Parthenon than it is for Yanni to come here and play in the local league.
Okay.
Well, what about a statue of Ange Postecoglou? Would that be
That
fitting?
would be good. That we need to do.
In brass?
Yes, in brass.
It will be brazen. It will be a brazen statue of Ange Postecoglou. Where would we put this statue? Where would you position this? I would position this in front of...
Lakeside Stadium?
No, nothing like that. In front of the MCG, the bastion of AFL and cricket and all of these Anglo-Saxonic sports. And he would be pointing his finger like this, mes enfants. I'm coming after your sports.
Or like this.
Football, brackets, soccer, it will take over. I think that'd be great. What do you think about that?
No, I think a statue of Ange is mandated. We should do it.
And Angelos, his name's Angelos, the angel, and the.
We should give him wings. We should give the statue wings and a halo.
I was leading to that point, and you just took what
The wind from your sails.
it wasn't going to be a punchline because we have no sense of humor. But going back to the Parthenon and the statue of Athens, Nike, victory, and of course Victoria, Nikia. So
True.
Victoria should be called Nikia, not Victoria. Nikia, because that's what Nikia means, Victoria, yeah. The statue of Athens, Nike, was always presented as this angelic seraphic being with wings. So Ange Postecoglou flying over the Parthenon with wings, would that be more or less tasteful than Adolph's boot?
I think because Ange is Greek, it's allowed. And it's tasteful.
Ange says that he's Greek.
Yes.
And this raised the ire of a few Australian commentators who took
Anglo-Saxons,
issue,
right?
Yeah, took issue with
Yeah.
the fact that he said that he was Greek.
Yeah.
And my argument is, again, can't you be both?
They wouldn't understand that.
Would you
concept.
understand that?
I understand
So
it.
if Yannis says, I'm Greek and I'm Nigerian and I'm
Yeah.
American,
Yeah.
is there room within a person for a composite identity?
Absolutely.
Okay. A lot of people can't understand this.
Well, it's common. It's common.
Do you remember being asked as a kid,
Most people have got multiple, identities, right?
or personalities?
Yeah,
in
well,
my
that
case.
too.
Yeah. You remember being asked as a kid in the playground, if there was a war between Greece and Australia, who would you fight for?
Yes.
What would your answer be?
Back then,
I know what your answer would have been back then.
it would have been Greece.
Yeah, I know. See,
A country I had never visited in my entire life.
And you get Australian Anglo-Saxon journalists asking this question
Yes.
of migrants all the time.
Yeah.
And I was very clever because I will try and stress to my Anglo-Saxon interlocutors, that's a big word for people who are speaking to me, and the fact that Greece has always been on the side of Australia in all the wars since Australia began, which was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a stupid question. Number one, why would Greece have me? Can you imagine me in Greek khaki fighting? Like you turn up, γιατί θες ρε, θέλω να πολεμήσω για την Ελλάδα. Εσύ ρε, πήγαινε να πεις ένα φραπέ δίπλα από το Παρθενώνα. Watch the drones fly by. Άσε μας ρε, κολόγερε. Can you imagine? Why the hell would they want me to fight for them?
I don't know.
Strategic advisor, translator. You have to
I thought
Translate.
you were going to transition into...
Let's not get into
I
that
don't know.
topic, man.
Or maybe we could do propaganda work for both sides.
I think that would be good.
I think we would cause a lot of confusion.
I don't know. It's the accent, you see. People can't place us.
No.
No.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they can.
So you're from Folegandros. Are you from Makronissos? What have you heard about Makronissos?
That it's Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island. It is the Greek Long Island, except there's no New York on it, mes enfants. Makronissos is this barren as anything island off the coast of Attica, and it's a place of exile, always has been.
Right.
And very famous for the fact that beginning, I think, in the Metaxas era, people were exiled to that island, possibly not as early as that, but may have been, but definitely during the time of the dictators and the junta, people were exiled to that rock as a form of punishment because they were politically undesirable. But did you know, ye of Pontian descent, that after 1922, it was used as a place to decontaminate Pontian refugees?
Really?
Place of sorrow, yeah. It's something not many people know about. They associate Makronissos with political refugees, but a lot of political kratumeni,
Yeah.
but a lot of Pontians were processed, in inverted commas, on Makronissos. Because the whole idea is that these people are dirty, these people are coming from God knows where, we don't know what diseases they carry, we're going to take them there and decontaminate them. imagine you have these people that have just lived the trauma of genocide and the trauma of being thrown out of their homes, lost people. You know the stories of people having dug up the bones of their ancestors and taken them with them to their new land.
Wow.
Having to sit on this rock where there is absolutely nothing in order to be decontaminated. I didn't know about this, I confess, until recently. And there is a monument on the island
Really?
dedicated. A lot of them died. A lot of them died because the trauma of the removal, the dire conditions on the way, the fact that there's nothing there, the fact that there was a lot of them died because of that whole process of removal and being put on the island. So for me, it just creates a new perspective for that very famous, very historical place of sorrow. And it serves as a way of really, really bringing down the tone of this episode of apotropaic reflux. And if you are feeling this program repeating on you, that was the intention.
That was the intention.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Speaking of death, I do have one. I want to ask you a question about a painting that you commented on recently.
Okay.
Death of Palladius? Or
Who?
Palladius?
I don't know who Palladius is, my friend.
Now you're going to force me to actually look it up.
Palladius. Could be. What about Actaeon? Was it Actaeon? I don't know. Was it Spiro? Spiro the baker, who worked with the ecumenical patriarch. I don't know.
You keep on going, D.
I can't keep on going. I'm only have an
I am
ideas.
going to look this up.
I do not have a sense of imagination.
Oh, yeah.
There are many Greek paintings. This has been one of them. And many Greek painters. My favorite is Nikos Enkolopoulos, who was a very famous poet, surrealist poet, one of the few surrealist poets of Greece, because Greeks, I feel, don't do surrealism nearly as well as anybody else. But he was also a famous painter and in a surrealistic style.
Death of Pelopidas.
I was talking about Nikos Enkolopoulos and you're talking about Pelopidas. What's so significant about Pelopidas?
I wanted to know why. I find the painting haunting, but I
Yeah.
want to know why you posted it.
Okay. Death of Pelopidas. You can look up who Pelopidas was. He was a very famous general and he died. Spoiler alert. Sorry. But I'm always fascinated by the way Greece, Greeks, Greek history is portrayed by the West.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So whatever painting I find that has to do with Greek mythology, Greek history, I'm interested to see what the messages are. And it's always the homoerotic figure of the semi-clad nude general, lying in state with people around him weeping and
Yes.
drapery and angels and things. And
It was Pelopidas.
he was a general. We're not going to talk about Pelopidas right now because I find his death distasteful. But you can look it up for yourselves, mes enfants, as many of you do. But that's the whole idea. The whole idea is how is ancient Greece portrayed in modern times, and how is that being used rather than just to portray an event? And why would we want to portray this event? What are the subliminal messages that we're providing that maybe bolster Western civilization and the idea that the West is heir to that Pelopidas? Because we don't see the death of Kolokotronis, being presented by famous Western painters. It's the death of Pelopidas, the death of Epaminondas, the death of Leonidas. Yeah? These things form the basis, rightly or wrongly, of Western culture. But things that happen after 1453, but even before with Byzantium, because Byzantium has always been presented as something alien, weird, retrograde.
It's true.
Very early on. Yeah, that's something else. So that's the motivation for looking at these kind of paintings. And I mean, you see attempts of that. Delacroix with his famous paintings of the Greek Revolution. What you actually see are exotic Orientalist figures that look like classical sculptures, but wearing the costumes of the time. It's almost like a tableau. Some of them are confronting, like the Massacre of Chios is an amazing picture, and the Liberty in the Ruins of Messolongi, amazing. But they speak to an audience, which was very useful because those pictures were speaking to an audience that said, we know classical Greece, unlike now, They knew their classics. They were reading the classics. They knew them better than we ever will. That was the understanding of Greece. Okay, so we're linking what happened then to these guys here who are the heirs of the classical tradition till they get to Greece and see what we're really like. And therefore we have sympathy for them. Therefore we will raise money to free them. Therefore we will lobby our governments to do something about them. It worked. It was an amazing propaganda tool. So, Pete, if we have, instead of the death of Pelopidas, we get a contemporary artist who really speaks to modern culture. I don't know who that is. I don't understand modern art, I confess. And present to them the death of Lefteris Pandazis. I'm not saying if he dies anytime soon, it's not our fault. Or the death of Yanni Antetokounmpo when the time comes. Or the death of, I don't know who. Name me someone in Greece who's famous worldwide. Do you know anyone who's famous worldwide?
Onassis.
He's dead. The death of Eleni Furiera, yeah? The death of, who's that girl that sang that song at Eurovision? With the big glasses? Clavdia. The death of Clavdia, yeah? Will that elicit the worldwide response and sympathy, like Delacroix's painting, in order to rally the troops and get everyone to assist Greece back on its road of recovery?
I don't think so.
Or does the parlous state of affairs in Victoria take precedence? I don't know. Maybe you can let us know. I'm not sure.
I
Don't
think,
know how that works.
I think it's the West love affair for all things ancient Greek, and and the
ancient
West really do believe that they are the continuance of that ancient Greek philosophy of democracy and culture and so forth.
Here's a little hint. So are the Arabs. And this is something that many Greeks
Don't tell the
like.
West that.
No, don't tell the Greeks that.
That too.
Because Greeks like their privileged position as, we gave you as they say, ta phota tu politismou, as the lights of our civilization. But we know that Greek philosophy was translated into Syriac and then transmitted by the Assyrians and then transmitted into the Arabic world. And that caused a revolution in thought and philosophy and astronomy and maths in the Arabic world for a period. To the extent where they took over Spain, the Arabs did. And there's that fallacy that the West took Greek civilization from the Arabs who were in Spain. Now, that's not true. Some of them would have been exposed to it in Spain, but there were a lot of Greek refugees in Italy fleeing the darkness coming 1453, the date we shall not mention, and bringing new ideas, new books that had lapsed because the two parts of the Eastern and Western Roman Empire were no longer talking to each other and had coalesced into two different language and identity spheres. So that happens. And the Arabs do amazing work. The astronomy, the algebra, all these things. Yeah?
Yeah.
That is, and even trying to use, on occasion, theological concepts from Greek philosophy to discuss concepts in their own religion and forming Islamic theology. There were some undercurrents that did that. We forget that. We forget that we are in the center of a cultural continuum that went both ways but did different things and it evolved of its own accord. So the question is, who owns a culture?
Or we do, no doubt.
Okay, great. That's it. Finished. Thank you for watching. And if I may
It's a good question,
be
though.
permitted to not provide an answer,
Go
to
ahead.
sit on the fence, it's for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
You take of it what you will. You look at Adidas. It's its own culture. It imposes itself upon the Parthenon. And yet we all wear Adidas clothes. Well, a lot of us do. I remember in the 90s, there were those Adidas tracksuits that had the stripes going down the leg, but there were the 2 stripes or 3 stripes going around the back of the leg.
Right.
And depending on how many stripes you had the back of the leg, that's how cool you were in the classroom.
Serious?
Yeah, I remember this.
Don't remember going
I
through
was
that.
not cool. I was not cool because I had 2 stripes and my friends had 3. But my yaya had bought me a tracksuit for my birthday. Yeah.
Mate, what branding does.
Stripes make you run faster. It's a documented fact. That's why the columns on the Parthenon are fluted. Because, and the columns meet in the middle. There's that entasis. There's amazing thing to make the columns look straight. The ancient Greeks who designed the Parthenon knew that they had to be slightly curved.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it creates the optic illusion of straightness, which is an amazing thing.
From afar or something.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And the mathematicians obviously have been able to calculate the point where the columns meet. And let me tell you, mes enfants, because then in the columns meet at exactly the point where the drones were flying. Yeah. So Adidas is onto something.
Yeah. We look forward to more additional events at the Parthenon then.
No, I think they've done their dash. I don't think that you'll be seeing them flying over the Parthenon. Maybe they'll be flying over Santorini next time. You know,
why not? I mean, that one there's that island's been done to death with regards
flying
to
over
tackiness.
Sunio. You know, maybe there'll be a shoe everywhere around an archaeological site in
Yanina.
Greek.
Why can't they do something in Yanina?
Because no one would be impressed. No one would care. Do you know what there's? Have you ever been to Yanina? You don't
haven't
look like the
been,
kind of person
man.
who
I
would.
haven't been. One day.
Yanina is my maternal homeland. My mother's from there, in the interest of disclosure. And Yanina has a big lake.
Mm.
Yeah. It has a couple of mosques, which are landmarks, built on churches that used to exist and which were pulled down in order to accommodate the mosques.
Mm.
There's an island in the middle of the lake. It's a very beautiful town. It's a very historic town.
Mm.
No one would notice it. The sky hangs very low over Yanina. There's
Right.
a brooding presence of years of suffering, misery, and yaniotical brilliance. I'll look at the sugar. Yeah, Tito Ferran, nice. And I'd move on.
Seems somewhat fitting for someone called Adolf to actually go there and push his brand, I would think, with all that gloom.
You're trying to provoke me. It's working. Well, you know that we'll go into that next time, but 1940s and the great victories of the Greek army were in Epirus.
Yes, they were.
We don't want to talk about that now.
Okay.
That's a spoiler alert for another program, but we'll forget Mes Enfants. We'll probably talk about something frivolous, but very important.
We will.
Next time.
We should actually go through next time some of the comments too. We'll do
No.
We'll do
I
a
don't-
specific episode on that.
You
I
can
think.
do that. I don't engage with viewers because, I mean, there's only one of them. You know, there's only one of them. That's the censor in Canberra to make sure that we are a family show. Because what's our rating? You. That's for unspeakable and unwatchable.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
We've got an official classification.
We're done. We're done.
We're done? Well, Pete,
Any final words?
as always, the pleasure was nondescript. The honor was lacking.
It certainly was.
And if the ugly tides of fate should decree that we meet again, I hope it's later rather
Yeah.
than sooner.
Yes.
Nasa kalare adelfe.
Yeah. Likewise, Dean. Likewise.
Yeah. I wish you all the very, very best. And
Thank
I mean
you
that
so much.
from the bottom of my Adidas shoes.
And from the bottom of my Nikes.
My final word, and that's from the both of us, Mes Enfants, and we didn't agree. I didn't get your consent for this, but I'm sure that you're used to me speaking on your behalf by now.
Absolutely. Yep.
In terms of Adidas and how we feel about that, there's a great Greek phrase, "Σας γράφουμε στα παλιά μας τα παπούτσια."
Bye. See ya.